Welcome to Inspired Edinburgh, the home of powerful conversations. I'm Elliot Reeves, and my guest today is James Ketchell. James, also known as Captain Ketch, is an adventurer, motivational speaker, and author. On the 1st of February 2014, you became the first and only person on the planet to have rowed the Atlantic, summited Mount Everest, and cycled around the world. In 2015, you published your first book, The Ultimate Triathlon. Grylls said of it, as you read James's story, you will begin to believe that you too could achieve the extraordinary. You've received extensive coverage in the national media and the press, and your blogs have appeared in magazines including Men's Health and Sidetracked. You're an ambassador for children's charities Over the Wall and Kindled Spirit, as well as the Scouts, and you've recently become a fully qualified gyrocopter pilot. James, it's truly an honour to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. That sounded like quite a cool intro, didn't it? That's cool. I'm happy with that.
It really is. It's one of the coolest intros that I've probably ever read, if we're being honest. I always like to ask, once I've kind of said all that as the intro piece, sitting there now, what does it make you feel?
Do you know what? For a second I thought, wow, this guy sounds pretty cool. And then I realised it's just me. So I don't really think about it too much, if I'm really honest.
Really? It's really interesting that. Yeah, and obviously we've had an opportunity to spend a bit of time together, and awesome. You are an incredibly humble individual.
That's very kind of you. My parents always said, never ever boast about anything. And I'm not really one for saying, hey, look at me, look what I've done. So I do like sharing stories, but I'm not really one for sort of saying I've done this, I've done that. That's just not me. Everyone's different, but
for sure.
I just like to go about my stuff and just do it. And I learned a few years ago that actually some of the greatest people on this planet you've never heard of. So not that I'm in that category, but
yeah. Excellent. So it would be great to kind of go back to, I suppose, your early life and hear a bit about your story. Where you grew up, what you were like, etc.
What was I like? Okay, so I grew up in a little town in Hampshire, North Hampshire, called Basingstoke. Mm-hmm. In terms of what I was like, if I'm really honest with you, I was always a good boy when I was younger. I was always a kind person. But I was a bit silly. I was a little bit like a sort of a Dennis the Menace. I messed about a lot, kind of got into trouble, bit of mischief, and I'd go out and make camps and build fires and do things I probably shouldn't have done. But then I suppose in my later life, sort of as I become a teenager and into my early 20s, I found something that gave me a bit more confidence, and that was going to the gym. When I was young, I was very skinny. My face was riddled with spots. I had zero confidence, and then all of a sudden I found the gym, and I figured out how to get stronger and get bigger. And all of a sudden, when you go from this skinny little kid and actually you start getting bigger, you start getting muscles, and people start saying, "Wow, James, you look different. What are you doing? Wow, you're going to the gym?" All of a sudden, you get this sort of confidence, and I found out what it was like to set goals and achieve them. And also going to the gym gave me discipline and structure, which I completely lacked, completely. And all of a sudden, that just, as a person, I became more confident. But when I was young, I guess I was like any ordinary kid. I was a little bit lost. I messed about. I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I had no idea. I just kind of did stuff,
Yeah, because I was going to say that. Going back to that stage, what did you think that you would likely do as an adult?
If I'm honest with you, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had all these wild ideas, but when I was young, I had very little confidence in myself. I left school I had no qualifications, and I wasted the opportunity for someone to teach me and learn. And that was a big mistake. Luckily, things kind of worked out to a certain extent, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. I always struggled academically. I didn't really know if I wanted to perhaps do something outside. I fell into working in a gym as well, which I really enjoyed. That was quite physical, and I ended up being quite good with people. I like interacting with people. I like talking. And I also like listening, believe it or not. I do talk a lot, but I like to listen as well. Mm-hmm. And that actually stood me in good stead to become a personal trainer and things. And then I ended up moving into I actually got made redundant from that and ended up moving into a sales job. And that sales is just talking to people and listening and understanding. And I ended up doing quite well in that, yeah.
Excellent.
But I had no idea. And it's funny, isn't it? Because if you'd have said to me when I was 13, 14, you know, I was a bit lost. I had no drive. I had no motivation. I was so lazy. If you'd have said to me, hey, James, when you're 35 years old, you'll have done this, this and this. You'll have written a book. You'll be traveling around the world speaking about your experiences.
Yeah.
You'll be about to do this. And I would say, you can't even dream that. You can't even make that up. That's not going to be me. But I tell you what, life is full of surprises, and it's never too late, and you never know what's around the corner. And I think for me, over the last sort of 10 years, I've actually worked out that, and you hear this, people talking about this, and you think, well, I'm not really sure it's true. But I'll tell you something, every single person out there has the ability to be whoever they want to be. You just got to want it enough. And it was that first sort of big adventure that I got into when I rode across the Atlantic that gave me even more confidence. Then all of a sudden, you start to think, well, okay, if I can do that, why can't I do this? Because I didn't do anything special. I just rode a lot on, I don't know, I did it. So if I really push myself, what more can I do?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you find that you're a different person and you're doing different things and your life's sort of going off. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I wish I could do that, or, you know, wish I've done this. And actually the reality is, it's not actually that difficult. The hardest part is sort of taking that sort of first step. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was very nervous about announcing to people that I was going to row across the Atlantic, because human beings are scared of failing. Mm-hmm. So by default, if you do nothing, you can't fail. But actually what I've learned is that's the worst thing you could ever do. You're much better off having a go at something and it not working out than not. Mm-hmm. And, you know, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but stuff also hasn't gone right for me. There's been some things that have gone wrong, but I've learned from them. And
yeah. But at what stage in your life did you believe that achieving, you know, anything that you wanted was actually possible?
Not until I was a little bit older, into my sort of mid-20s. I'm probably still not grown up now and I'm 35, but I don't think I really grew up until I was into my mid, possibly even to late 20s. And it, you know, once you've done a few big things, you then start to think, well, hang about, maybe this really is possible. And actually, when you take responsibility for who you are and where you want to be, you know, and don't rely on someone else to get you here or do things for you, actually you'll be amazed at what you can achieve. And you know, when you have the right mindset and you just believe, you just got to believe that you can do it.
Yeah. Definitely. One of the major parts in your story to date was an accident that you actually had on a motorbike. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, I remember that. I used to race bikes as a hobby. I loved it. I wouldn't really say I was an adrenaline junkie, but I love bikes and I love racing bikes. And I'd crashed loads of times before. You generally just get up and dust yourself off when you crash on a track. But one particular time I was accelerating out the corner and I was trying to catch someone, and I just put a little bit too much throttle down, and basically the rear wheel span up. So the back of the bike came round on me and it threw me over the top of the handlebars. Now I was traveling at about 115 miles an hour at the time. Wow. And you know, when the human body hits concrete at that kind of speed, it can be problematic. And I hit the deck hard and it knocked me out and broke both of my legs. Breaking your legs is not a problem. It's fairly straightforward. We can, you know, repair it all. Mm-hmm. Broke my arm and I broke my hand. Oh. But the problem that I had was I damaged my ankle very, very badly. I basically destroyed the talus bone. It wasn't just a break. It broke into pieces. Mm-hmm. And actually the surgeon said, yes, when I opened you up, it looked like a grenade has gone off. That was not really a good thing. And the ankle doesn't have a particularly good blood supply. So once you rupture that blood supply, it was never really the same. So it was the ankle that gave me problems, and it was all bolted up, and it's still bolted up now. But it was really at that point, I mean, it took about 2 years to make a proper recovery, or as good as it was ever going to get. And I was in hospital for a good couple of months. And it was really at that point, you know, when you have something taken away from you that you take for granted every day, like the ability to get up and walk around and do what you ordinarily do, when that's taken away from you, you realise what you've got, and you don't know what you've got until you lose it. That there's no shadow of a doubt that's true. Certainly, I think anyway. And I'd always had this dream that I wanted to try and row a boat across the Atlantic Ocean, but I never really had the guts to do it. And I think it's because I was scared of failing, I guess. But it's funny, isn't it? Because when I was lying in that hospital bed, I would have given anything just to been able to get up and have a go, even if I'd failed. It was not really a problem, because at that time I couldn't do anything. So I guess that was a bit of a sort of a catalyst, a bit of a kickstart, the kick up the bum that I needed really to get moving. And I say to people that actually I fell in, not necessarily a better, but I fell into a different life. So that accident was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'm a true believer that life is really all about how you look at things. And I think it would have been really easy. And don't get me wrong, I was a bit fed up to begin with. But actually, you know, you can go two ways. You can think, well, I've broken my legs, I can't really walk very well, this is a disaster, my life's over. Or you can think, well, okay, no problem, it's happened. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to... So it's how you look at things, and I wanted to kind of use it as an opportunity to try and go after something. And I felt like I needed something to aim for as well. And so I was like, right, this is what I'm going to do.
I mean, I suppose the very fact that you would survive something like that is kind of quite miraculous in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, safety equipment in terms of motorbike racing has got better. I did have quite a knock to the head. Might explain a few things, but yeah, it was no real problem in the grand scheme of things.
So what was the inspiration for rowing the Atlantic, and how did you kind of go about planning for that?
The inspiration, I think, you know, when I was young, I used to watch a television program called Tintin. Some people may be familiar with that. It's great children's program. And I think I kind of wanted to be that Tintin. And I don't know where, I think I'd followed someone online or something, or I'd heard about someone rowing across the Atlantic. And when I was younger, I kind of quite liked adventure. I liked the idea of it. And it was over many years, the idea was just bubbling away and growing. And it was really the accident that made me think, I want to try and do this. And it's a really good question, how do you go about doing it? Once you know other like-minded people, it's not that difficult, but it's quite intimidating to begin with. I mean, you know, you want to buy a rowing boat, you don't just pick up a copy of the Auto Trader or go on eBay, you know, you've got to know. So I got in contact with some people that had rowed the Atlantic and asked them about their advice. And, you know, the hardest part was actually raising the funds to try and make it happen. I knew nothing about boats, and I didn't have the money to buy a brand new boat. So I found a second-hand boat, and I was the fourth guy to take this particular boat across. And I went to the bank, because I was working at the time, I had a job. And I went to the bank and I said, listen, I want to buy a car. And they said, yeah, how much do you need? And I think I can't remember how much they gave me. And I walked out of the bank with this money, and I thought, wow, I can't believe that. And I went off and I bought a second-hand rowing boat. And then it felt real. I had something to show people. It's like, this is the boat that I'm going to row across the Atlantic in, and this is where you row, this is where you sleep, you cook your food like this, these are the solar panels. The solar panels charge the batteries run the water maker, the chart plotter, and all of a sudden this project became real. I had something to show. It was no longer an idea, it was happening. And then all of a sudden things just started to sort of progress from there, really. I went on a course to learn how to navigate. It's an RYA, Royal Yachting Association. It's called an Ocean Master. It took me a week to do, and there's talks into all of, you know, it covers navigation at sea, safety, all sorts of things really. And the Spanish authorities, you have to have that, otherwise they won't let you go. And I ended up setting off from a little place called La Gomera in the Canary Islands and rode to Antigua. It's only 3,000 miles.
Only. What was it like? What was the feeling when you had finished it?
The feeling that you get, or I got, when I rode into English Harbour was a feeling that I've never been able to replicate or come close to. You know, it took me nearly 4 months to get across. Usually you row across the Atlantic as a 2-man or a 4-man. Now I have no idea why no one would join me, so I decided to go on my own. And that was probably the best decision that I ever made. Should usually take about 70 or 80 days to get across. But when I crossed back in 2010 now, there are a lot of areas of low pressure, and that low pressure switches the wind direction. So instead of getting blown across, I was getting blown back. It was really demoralizing. And the best way to describe what it's like being out in an ocean when the seas are big and it's windy and it's rough, it's like being on a roller coaster. And no matter how loud you scream, it's never going to stop. It just keeps going and going. But you get used to it after a while. And it took me 110 days, 4 hours and 4 minutes to get across. Not that I was counting, right? And you don't see anyone in that. So there's no one. It's quite remote once you get out into the Atlantic. There are shipping lanes, so you do see commercial shipping, believe it or not, it's quite a bit. But once you get out into the middle, the closest people to you are 230 miles above you in the International Space Station orbiting the Earth. So it's pretty remote once you get out there. But when I rode into English Harbour in Antigua, it was incredible. My parents weren't there, their flight was cancelled, so they missed my arrival. So that was a bit of a shame. But it happened to be Antigua Race Week, which is basically when all these rich Americans get together and they race their yachts around the island, and there were literally thousands of people there. And I remember as I rode in, it was a Saturday afternoon at about 2 p.m. So you couldn't have picked a better time to arrive. It was just, I spent nearly 4 months out there and happened to arrive on this day, and at this time. And it was a very strange, surreal feeling, because all of these people started coming out, and then these people knew my name. I didn't know them. They knew my name. They knew about me. Yeah. It was strange. I guess it must have been on the internet, or the word got out in Antigua that this lunatic from Britain who'd spent 4 months in a boat on his own was about to row in. And, I had big yachts were sailing out to sort of meet me, and, it was, hey, well done. And people were calling my name. And I thought, how do you know my name? I don't know you. Wow. And then when you come into English Harbour, you go around a little headland, and then as you come in, the whole harbour, marina, whatever you want to call it, just opens up in front of you. And there was literally all these big, beautiful super yachts. There was hundreds of people, there were literally thousands, and there was all sort of beeping their horns on their boats and waving and cheering. And it was incredible. And I remember when I came up to the dock, it was a very surreal, a real feeling of happiness. But very strangely enough, I almost didn't want it to end. I spent nearly 4 months out there, all that time, and you can't visualize what it's going to be like to begin with, because it's such a huge thing to undertake. Like, your mind can't get around the concept of rowing 3,000 miles. And so someone told me, they said, if you can survive the first 3 days, you can do 3 months. And that's true. And when I left La Gomera, all I wanted to do was get through the first 3 days. I didn't think past that. And then I was like, right, okay, I want to get to the halfway stage, because I know if I get to the halfway stage, I'll then be closer to where I want to be. And also the currents get stronger as you get closer to the Canaries, and they literally it sucks you in. So the reason I left from the Canaries was that as you come out of the Canaries, you're utilising something called the Canary Current. So the whole mass of ocean is flowing down the side of Africa. And as you get to a lower latitude, so that means closer to the equator, you then pick up the North Equatorial Current. And again, the whole mass of ocean is flowing towards the Caribbean. Then the winds will start blowing you in, the trade winds start to form. But it was incredible. When I rode in and I saw all those people, it was an overwhelming feeling of happiness and relief. And to this day, I have never had a feeling like that since. And I'm not entirely sure I'll ever be able to get that feeling again. I think the only time that would come close to a feeling of happiness and joy it's quite difficult to articulate what it really felt like unless you've been in that situation before. The only time I think I'll ever get close to a feeling like that would be if I was to ever have like a child or something. I don't know if that's in my destiny, but that feeling has never been replicated since, and it was a feeling that I'll never ever forget.
Really, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I kind of wonder whether you get that sense of euphoria when you complete something else, because it's almost like an accumulation of things. Like, oh, I've done something else. That's incredible. This is even better.
Yeah.
But
it was the first time. It was the first big thing.
Yeah.
I had no idea what it would feel like. I was naive. I didn't know. And sometimes that's a good thing. I had no idea what it was going to be like out there.
Yeah.
And I had very little rowing experience. And a lot of people say, well, you must be a great rower, right? But the reality is, actually sitting on the seat and pulling the oars is the easiest part to rowing across an ocean. You've got to be able to deal with things, especially when you're on your own. So my water maker broke, so I lost the ability to turn salt water into drinking water. I had all sorts of problems. I was almost hit by a big commercial tanker, and that was really quite scary.
Yeah.
And all sorts of things went wrong. But when you look back, it's that really makes it. And it's unlikely you're going to get across without something going wrong or something happening. And it's just about how do you deal with it, you know. But yeah, it was magical.
Fantastic.
Being in the Atlantic is probably one of the best places you can be. The wildlife and everything. You know, I remember this huge fin whale came up under my boat and just gently surfaced, and my boat slid off the back of this whale. This whale was just a fin whale. It's probably the length of a bus. It was huge.
Wow.
And it was like, wow, what the hell just happened there? You know, and I remember there were beautiful, beautiful big fish swimming over. I'll tell you what was really interesting. Oceanic white-tip sharks. And I had two follow me for a couple of days. And they're very interesting creatures because I wanted them to come closer. So I was throwing food in to get them to come closer, and they would never, ever get close to the boat. And they just sat there sort of just hovering around me, just almost as if they were looking at me. And I had this theory that I could just jump in and it would be okay, but I decided not to test that in the end.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
Okay, I've got sort of two questions, I guess, on this. First question is, how does one go from rowing the Atlantic to climbing Everest? And I suppose pursuant to that, is there anything that you learnt from rowing the Atlantic that you could kind of translate to climbing Everest as well?
How did I go from rowing the Atlantic to climbing Everest? Well, I am a true believer. This was not planned, by the way, it just happened. You see, I learned that when you push yourself outside of your comfort zone, doors of opportunity just naturally open. And it was during my preparation that I met someone who was also rowing the Atlantic at a different time in a different boat, and we just became really good friends. And he happened to be, he didn't tell me to begin with, after a while I learned, but he was a very accomplished high altitude climber. I think he'd summited Everest 5 times at this point. His name's Rob Casserly, a wonderful man, he's a doctor. And we just became really friendly. And he basically said, James, after the row, come out to Everest with me. I was like, well, I've climbed before, but not to that kind of level. And if I'm honest, it was kind of on my mind, but I just sort of focused on getting across the Atlantic. And then when I did get across the Atlantic and I got home, we got in contact, and one thing led to another. And I found myself in a situation where I had to make a decision. Because I had a job at the time. I was given a sabbatical to row across the Atlantic, so I was quite lucky. And in order to go out and climb Everest, I effectively had to leave my job. And I had to kind of make a decision. And I remember I spoke to my boss about it, and he was a very good guy. And he said to me, when I initially said to him, I need a little bit more time off to climb Everest, he said, on your bike, son, which I think is quite ironic considering what I ended up doing a few years later. But he actually, this is my own boss, he said to me, listen, you will never get an opportunity like this again. Take it, and take that opportunity and grab it as tight as you can and run with it. And you see, sometimes human beings are programmed to sort of shy away from stepping out of your comfort zone and taking opportunities, and that will really hold someone back. And the best thing I ever did was to take a few risks and pursue things that came my way. It doesn't matter who you are. Everyone at some point in their life will have an opportunity drop on their lap. And it's whether you take it or not, and you kind of like maximize it. So it was luck how I ended up getting the opportunity to go out to Everest. I mean, I guess I pushed myself out of my comfort zone because I went and rode the Atlantic. And off the back of that, it kind of happened. In terms of what I learned out in the Atlantic and how I kind of used that when I was out on Everest and just in my everyday life now, I learned that as long as you keep going, you will always get what you want or where you want to be. And I had this kind of mindset that I was out in this huge ocean, and as long as I just kept going and didn't row in circles, by default I would get to land. I would eventually run out of ocean. And I didn't do anything special in the Atlantic. I just kept going. And that got me 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. And that is something that I'll never forget. And I'll tell you what I also learned out there is things change very quickly. And I learned to try and mentally stay on what I call an even keel. Because one day you could be really down, things aren't going so well, you've got very bad weather, you're getting blown back, it's demoralizing. The reality hits you of what you're trying to do. And then all of a sudden, the brain starts talking to you like, oh, this is not a very good idea, I shouldn't be out here. Maybe I should just be at home with doing a regular thing. Why did I come out here? This was such a stupid thing to do. And you have got to be able to turn those little inner voices off. It doesn't matter who you are. And the most successful people on this planet, everyone has to deal with those demons, doesn't matter who you are. But actually, 12 hours later, the wind might have shifted and you're flying along and you're as high as a kite. You think, this is brilliant. Wow, I'm so pleased I did this. This is great, I'm living the dream. But then the next day it could all go back again. And so things change very quickly, and I learned to try not to let my emotions kind of control me. And so your brain is your greatest ally, but at the same time it can be your worst nightmare. And you know, when you start to get into that kind of slightly negative downslope, the brain starts saying, well, hang about this. You start naturally making excuses for yourself, and you naturally start talking yourself out of something. And then all of a sudden, you've talked yourself into a good idea that you need to give up or would come back and do it another time. Now, it's a little bit difficult. You can't just give up when you're rowing across an ocean. You can't get out and just walk home. So you're there, you're committed. But it really taught me, don't ever let your brain talk you out of doing something. Because if you can just switch that off and just keep going, you'll be bloody amazed at where that will take you. And I kind of use that now in everything that I do. You know, you see, you need to be able to try and switch your brain off. Sometimes overthinking things is a big problem. So I just focus on what I need to do, and no matter what's going on up here, no matter what, I just focus. Today I have to do this, and it was row for 12 hours. And when I was out there, now it might be I have to send all these emails or do this and do that, but it's the same thing. No matter what's going on up here, just get your stuff done. If you do that, and that to me, I've been quite lucky. I've met quite a lot of successful people over the years in my quest for sponsorship. And I'll tell you something, the only difference between someone who you might look at and think, wow, that person's great, they're really successful, they've got a great business, they've got loads of money, they've done loads of cool stuff. The only thing that's different between them and someone else is their consistency. They don't let their brain talk them out of doing stuff, they just do it. And I'm telling you, that's what I learned from the Atlantic.
Great stuff, great stuff. So yeah, tell me a bit about what it was like to climb Everest. I mean, the sort of the experiential aspect of it.
What was it like climbing Everest? It was really hard, if I'm honest with you. I was quite lucky. I mean, I didn't have a huge amount of experience when I went out there. Luckily, Everest is very straightforward. It's not a technical climb. If you brought Everest down to sea level, you could, in fact, run up it. It's the sheer height that makes it so difficult. You cannot grasp the size of Everest until you're there and you kind of see what it's like. But it's a very different experience from rowing across the Atlantic. I was out there for nearly 4 months on my own. But when you go out to Everest, you're with other people. The expedition lasts about 6 weeks, so it's not really that long in the grand scheme of things. And overall, I had a wonderful experience. Now, I was quite lucky because I was also with Rob, my friend who I was going to climb with, actually couldn't make it. He became quite ill. So that year, he didn't make it. So my plan was to go out there with him, and that didn't quite materialise because he was unable to come. But it just so happened another chap was climbing. His name was Charles, and he was quite a bit older. He'd already attempted Everest before, and he got to the point where he was about 100 metres from the top and had to turn around and go back, come back down. So he was out there for the second time to try and nail this. And he was old enough to be my dad, actually. But we kind of clicked, and he almost by default became this sort of father figure, and he would reassure me that we could do it, everything was okay. And I really am a true believer that people come in and out of your life for a reason. And actually, I've never seen Charles since. We do keep in contact with one another, but I've physically not seen him since we were out on Everest. And I truly believe that he was there to help me too, because he really helped me get through that whole experience. Every time we were sort of struggling or we wasn't sure what was going on, he was constantly, it was very positive. Now, actually, he was a very successful guy in his own right. He owned numerous restaurants and properties and goodness knows what. But he had a good mindset and he had a good attitude. And that is why, if you don't even need to be a smart person. If you have a good mindset and a good attitude, that will take you further than anything else. And he really helped me out on Everest. And so mentally, Everest wasn't difficult because was within good company. But boy, physically it was difficult. The best way to describe it is, as you get a bit higher up, imagine sprinting down the street as hard as you can, and you are out of breath to the point where you can't even talk. You're just catching your breath. As you get higher up, it's like that, but just taking one small step at a time. You literally, as I got closer to the summit, I could only take 10 steps and then I'd have to stop, 10 steps. And you're walking, you couldn't intentionally walk this slow if you were sort of at normal sea level. And physically it was difficult. Beautiful scenery, beautiful. Yes, it was cold, but you wear the right equipment. So I got a little bit of frost nip, but you shouldn't be getting frostbite. It's bad personal admin to be getting. You see, years ago, it'd be a little bit of a war wound to say, yeah, I lost my finger. But now people would say, well, what did you do wrong? So the equipment has advanced quite a bit. It was incredible working with the local Sherpas and the local Nepalese people. I'll never forget them. They were just truly wonderful. And overall, it went quite quick and it was a real blur. I never thought of reaching the summit until Charles and I were heading to the summit. Because Everest is so massive, you've got to break it down into camps. And you have to go through a series of acclimatization climbs. And when I flew out to Nepal, my goal was just to get to base camp. That was it. Just get to base camp feeling as fit and as fresh as I could. You see, lower down, trekking up through the Himalayas and in the sort of lower camps, there's lots of, you get lots of colds and flus and germs kind of floating around. Higher up, that doesn't exist, so you don't get that. So my goal was just to get to base camp feeling fit and fresh without getting a cold. Because things take twice as long to heal up there. It's the lack of oxygen. And then the most dangerous part of climbing Everest is really going through the Khumbu icefall, which is this huge mass of ice that moves and shifts and can collapse, and it's very dangerous. So my goal was, okay, let's just get through the icefall, get up to Camp 1, and then that's another thing ticked off. So we did that, and then we sort of come back down, and then it was, right, okay, I've got to get to Camp 2. Getting to Camp 2 was quite simple. And then it was like, okay, my next goal is I've got to get to Camp 3. And I knew, someone said to me again, they said, if you can get to Camp 3, statistically, most people who get to Camp 3 do go on to get to the top. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, all I need to do is get to Camp 3. And statistically, I'll probably then know that I can get to the top. And actually, I got to Camp 3 with no real problems. And then, yeah, it was strange. And I remember I didn't even think about the summit until it was 12 o'clock at night, and we were at Camp 4. So we're above 8,000 meters. We're in the death zone now. And you're no longer acclimatizing. Your body is slowly dying. So you can only stay up there for 24, 48 hours at that kind of height. And it was dark, it was pitch black, but it was a very calm night. It was beautiful, not a breath of wind. And we set off. Took me about 12 hours to get, no, I think about 10 actually. But it took me quite a long time to get from Camp 4 up to the summit. And then you start to see the sun come up, and it's magical. But it was strange because you're struggling with the lack of oxygen. My brain was almost numb. I kind of didn't really have any emotion. I knew what I was doing. I knew where I was. I knew what I needed to do in order to keep myself safe. You're clipping in and out of safety ropes and things, and you're going through the process, and you know where you are, but you're not really taking it in. I wasn't anyway. And it didn't really sink in that I'd climbed the world's highest mountain until I actually got home. But yeah, it was really a case of just one step at a time. If you put 1 foot in front of you, that'll get you to the top of the world. And I'll tell you that because I've been there.
Yeah.
And it's the same with anything. Just keep moving, keep going. You'll always get where you want to go.
Fantastic. The cycle around the world does strike me as probably the most intimidating of the challenges, just given the sheer enormity of it. Like, how do you go about preparing yourself for that?
How did I prepare myself to cycle around the world? Well, the whole kind of concept of cycling around the world really came to me when I just got back from Everest, and I was unfortunately quite unwell. I'd succumbed to quite a nasty lung infection. And the day that I flew home from Nepal, I was then taken to hospital actually, and I spent a week there. And whilst I was lying there, I just kind of thought to myself, wouldn't it be a great idea to cycle around the world? So I got myself better, and I went through that process of trying to get to the start line. Now, luckily at this point, I'd sort of served my apprenticeship to a certain extent. I'd rode the Atlantic, I'd climbed Everest. So people listened to me when I said, hey, I'm going to cycle around the world. I'm raising money for a great charity. Can you help me? And actually, cycling around the world was pretty straightforward. If you can't cycle, or you're not a very good cyclist, well, guess what? You've got 18,000 miles to learn. And so you don't really need to be as fit as you might think, because I promise you're going to get fit on the go. Now, if you were going for a record where you needed to do 200 plus miles a day, that's a different project, really is. But I was doing, it averaged out to be about 100 miles a day. And it sounds like a lot, but if I'm really honest with you, if you've got all day, let's say you get up at 6 or 7 and you're on your bike at 8 o'clock in the morning, you should quite easily, by the early evening, have covered the best part of 100 miles. So, then you've got the evening to just relax and eat. Sometimes I camped out, sometimes I stayed with people and things, and it's not that difficult. The difficult part is, again, dealing with things as and when they break. So bike failures, bike problems. I was unsupported, so that means no one was following me in a car, buying me McDonald's and fixing my punctures and dealing with everything. And again, the easiest part was sitting on the bike, spinning the pedals. It was, again, very similar to Everest. My goal was just to get through certain days, like just get through the day and get through the legs. So I had, the first leg was like London down to Istanbul. And then I was headed out through India, Thailand, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. And then I had the Australia leg from Perth to Brisbane. That was magical. And then I cycled across America, and then I flew to Lisbon and cycled back up to London. So it was all broken down. Everything I do is broken down, because rowing a boat across an ocean or cycling around the world, it's too big a task to look at in one. It will blow your brain apart. Your brain, you won't be able to You won't be able to grasp the concept of that. It's too big. But actually, when you break it down, it's actually very, very manageable if you look at it like that. And that, you know, I remember, I think I was about a month in and I'd already got as fit as I was ever going to be after about a month. And I was at a point where I could get on a bike and cycle 100 miles just like that, no problem. I could get up in the morning and before even breakfast I could knock out 50 miles. But you get to the point where you're pretty fit. The human body is incredible at acclimatizing to things and getting used to things. You will be able to do far more than you think you can do when you need to. And you only really find out what you can do when you need to do it. Yeah, I met some incredible people, you know, and I say this to people all the time. The kindness and generosity that I experienced when I was going around the world, I'll never forget. And I'll be playing forward these favours for the rest of my life. And, you know, honestly, it really doesn't matter what skin colour you have or what religion you practice or what country you come from. I'll tell you something, and I'll tell you what I learned. And it was going around the world that really cemented this for me, and that was 99.99% of human beings that walk the face of this earth are wonderful, great, kind people. And that is something I'll never forget. So many people were so good to me, and they didn't need to be. I was just some lunatic riding a bike around the world. And I do a lot of work with kids, and I wanted to speak in a school in every country I visited because I didn't want to be another British lunatic sort of fulfilling my own dreams. And I managed to do that, and I spoke to over 10,000 young people when I went around the world. I was really pleased about that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
But I could talk to you all day about it, you know.
Yeah. So when did you decide that you would write a book about the things that you had achieved and accomplished?
Well, it was something that I thought, when I was cycling around the world, I had a lot of time to think. And the trick is to use your time wisely. Think about all the things you want to do when you get back. And I thought it really makes sense to try and write a book. And I had no visions or desire to write some amazing book. It was never going to make me a whole load of money. I was never going to be a best-selling author. And I just had this goal. I just want to write a book. And I was determined to write it myself. I didn't want someone to interview me and write it for me. Although there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just didn't really feel like I could say, hey, I've written a book when someone else wrote it for me. So I thought, right, this is what I'm going to do. And I had all these wonderful experiences and I wanted to share them with people. And so I thought, right, I'm going to write a book. Again, I had no idea how to do it. I really struggled at school. I mean, by this point, I've been writing blogs for a while and my ability to write and articulate myself had improved. But, you know, writing a book was really quite an intimidating thing. But again, I just broke it all down into sections. Now, I had all the blogs that I'd written from the Atlantic and Everest sort of stored on my laptop. So I thought, well, I can go through them. And I just broke it all down and thought, my goal was to write about all three things. Because this whole concept of the ultimate triathlon was really brought up by the media when I finished the cycle. I didn't come up with the term ultimate triathlon, the media did. I felt a bit guilty because I've never completed a triathlon actually, but no one ever questioned me. And I just thought, well, okay, if I write about each thing that happened and all the people that I met, I'm guessing I've got a fair bit of content. And I just started writing. I literally got my laptop, opened up a Word document and just started writing. And I was almost a little bit bipolar with it. 1 minute I loved it and I felt really creative. And I was writing 3, 4, sometimes 5,000 words a day that I thought was good quality. And then other times I just could not string a sentence together. It just wasn't flowing. I worked with an editor, so I used to send a few thousand words at a time to my editor, and she would say, yeah, it's really good, or take this out, go into a bit more detail on this. So, you know, everyone who writes a book will work with an editor, that's their job. So that took the whole worrying about sort of grammar, and I mean, you don't need to worry about spelling anymore, the computer does all that for you. Grammar, someone will tidy that up for you. all I had to do was just tell the story, and I wanted to try and tell the story in a way that if I was speaking to someone, this is how I would tell it. So I wrote it like that, and it was quite a challenge. Do you know, it took me 1 year to write this book, and if I'm honest, for a lot of the time, it felt like it was never going to end. It just kept going and going, but I then sort of got to that halfway point, and then I just started writing. Then I had to start writing about cycling around the world. And then I was on the last sort of bit, and I was like, hang about. Actually, you know what? I've surprised myself here. A, I've enjoyed this, or I am enjoying it. And B, I don't think this is that bad. I'm no author, but from what books I have read, I think I'm doing a half decent job of this. And then all of a sudden, as I got closer to finishing it, I thought, wow, I'm really going to write a book. This is going to happen. And then I got to the point where it was finished and then it was published. And then the feeling that I got when I held that first copy in my hand was really magical. And I've been quite lucky. I sold quite a few thousand copies. And the feedback I've had's been really, really good. So you never know. And you know, if you'd have said to me when I was a little kid at school, you'd have written a book, so don't be so sure. I mean, I wouldn't even look at a book. I didn't, let alone write one. So, you know, if anyone is thinking about writing a book, stop thinking about it and do it. I promise you, it's the best thing that you can do. I don't really make a great deal of money out of them. It was never about that. It was just, this is the goal, to write a book. And I was really pleased that I did it.
What are you most proud of out of everything that you've achieved?
What am I most proud of out of everything I've achieved? The fact that I took a risk and tried to pursue a dream, and so far it's kind of working out. Kind of know where I want to be. I kind of know what I want to do, and I'm quite pleased about that, because it's too easy to conform to what other people think is right for you. And the reality is, the only person that knows what is right for you is yourself. You know, your parents may think they know what's best for you, but actually they don't. Only you do. And you have to understand, everyone, like, one person who may think you're making a mistake by doing something or tries to talk you out of it is not trying to deny you of an opportunity. They think they know what's right, but also times are changing, and it is okay to pursue your own dream, your own goal. And if you want something, I'll tell you one of the things that I learned, if you want something enough and you're prepared to put the work in, any hobby or anything you do can be turned into some kind of business. There's always a way if you want something enough. But people are frightened to pursue their own dreams because they think, well, it's not really normal, is it? I just better have a normal job. You know, mum and dad have told me this is a bad idea. But mum and dad don't have a clue, because they were born in a different generation. And so it's not their fault. They just don't understand. Their way of thinking is different. They're not in the current time. So, yeah, I'm quite pleased about the fact that I had a dream and decided to sort of pursue it. But it was strange, because I only set out to row across the Atlantic. I did not set out to become a full-time speaker, author, adventurer. That all just kind of happened, and I accidentally fell into it. I love talking to people, and I love sharing stories of adventure and fun, and I started speaking when I got back from the Atlantic, and just started speaking in scout groups, and I started going into schools, just telling a story. That's all I was doing. But then when I got back from Everest, I managed to get a lot of really nice footage that I've shot up on the summit, going up through the icefall, the Hillary Step, and it really brings the story to life. So I had that to talk about too. And all of a sudden, someone offered to pay me to go into their work and give a talk. I thought, wow, okay, cool. Didn't think anything of it. Kept doing it. And all of a sudden, more and more people started asking me to speak. Then one day I got picked up by a speaking agent. And I had to find a job when I got back from Everest, ideally, because I'd left my job. I'd sold everything that I owned, and I moved back in with my parents to reduce the overheads. And you got to make sacrifices sometimes to do the things that you want to do. Nothing worth having comes easy. But then I thought, well, hang about, do I really need to go back to work? Because I seem to be giving a few talks a month. People are paying me to do this. Hang about. I seem to have accidentally fallen into speaking here. But I really love it. And I want to do more of this. How can I figure out how to do more of this? And then, yeah, before you know it, I'm sort of a full-time speaker. And I still don't really use the term adventurer, full-time adventurer, because for me, I feel it's a bit cheesy. But I don't know, I do a few things and I talk about them, and that's about it, really. But when you find I was lucky enough to find something that I loved. And when I look back, that's why I was a little bit lost when I was young. But every kid is really, I mean, it's a part of growing up. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But then all of a sudden I found something that I love. I thought, it was like a light switch, bing, just went on. It's like, this is what I want to do. This makes me happy. I feel like I'm achieving something. I can also share stories of fun and adventure with young people. And hang about, if I really make an effort with this, maybe I could make a difference and potentially inspire some young people to pursue their own goals and dreams, whatever they may be. And so that's really what I'm doing, and just carry on doing it. Luckily, I've never been booed off stage, so I'll just keep doing it until that happens. I'm also quite pleased and quite proud of the fact that I do a lot of work with young people. As you said, I'm an ambassador for the Scouts and things. And I don't know whether mentally I'm a bit young myself, but for some reason, I have this ability to connect with young people. I'll go into a room or a school and I'll just start talking, and for some reason I seem to be able to get their attention. I don't know whether that's because I've done a few cool things and they think that's cool and they respect that, or what, I don't know. But the amount of times I've gone into a school and the teacher said, hey man, I have never ever seen these boys, especially that one, I have never seen him sit still for an hour and concentrate like that. How'd you do that? I'm like, I don't know, just talk. And so again, it's something that I really enjoy. And like I said, when you find out what you really enjoy, take that and run with it, because I'll tell you something, the most valuable thing we have is time. People don't realise that. They think the most valuable thing they have is money. Trust me, it's not. And I remember when I was 16, 17, 18, I was sort of a bit lazy. I got fired from more jobs and I had hot dinners. And then before you know it, I'm 35 years old. Where's the last 15 years gone? And one of the things, someone said to me the other day, what do you regret? I don't really have any regrets, if I'm honest. But in some ways, I wish I found what I love doing earlier on, because I would have started doing this when I was 20 instead of, I think it was about 25 when I rode the Atlantic. But
So what, I mean, this is going a bit deeper. What do you feel at this stage is your kind of purpose in life?
I would say that my purpose in life is to carry on doing the things that I love doing, but also try and encourage other people that actually I'm a pretty simple guy, and if I can do the things that I've managed to do, then anyone can do anything. They really can. I am not a smart person at all. I've just got an ability to set my mind on something and do it. And I'm quite lucky, I'm quite good at convincing people to buy into my ideas, so that is quite useful. But one of the things that I'm starting to move into now is helping other people with their sort of expeditions and things. I took a chap across the Atlantic Ocean in a pedalo last year. His name's Anthony, a wonderful man. And he was a very successful guy in his own right. He'd made a lot of money, and he had this dream. He wanted to cross the Atlantic, but he didn't have a clue how to do it. So he was put in contact with me, and he said, James, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I want to do this. Teach me everything you know. Let's make it happen together. And so we did, and it was incredible. It was a brilliant job. And so my purpose now, one of my purposes now, is to help other people pursue their goals and dreams. If someone said to me, can you help me how to be a lawyer? I wouldn't have a clue. But if it's something I understand, i.e., they want to cycle around the world, or they want to cross an ocean, or they want to go away and do something on a sort of an adventure sort of scale, I can help. when I'm relatively well qualified to do that. So it's sort of helping other people pursue their own goals and dreams. I get a real kick out of that. I actually have, believe it or not, I have no interest in saying, look at me, look what I've done. And I don't really like self-promotion, if I'm honest. I like to talk lots, but I don't like self-promotion. I did realise a few years ago that if I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, I have to promote myself to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a way to do it without looking like a total dickhead, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, just sort of helping other people and continuing my work with young people.
Mm-hmm.
I like doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It just, and if I'll be really honest, even if no one knew who I was and I was to never ever get any recognition for anything ever again, it's not a problem. I'll still do what I want to do. There's a lot of people out there in this world that do things for ulterior reasons and motives. Now, I don't really care what they do, what other people do. But for me, it's very important to be true to yourself and do the things that you want to do for the reasons that you want to do them. Not because what you're going to get out of it, or this person might see me do that, or wow, I'll get a bigger profile, or whatever. So all that kind of good stuff comes, I think, off the back of just being true to yourself and genuine and doing the stuff that you like doing and just being honest, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I really like that.
But that's what I'm sort of most proud of, and my purpose now is just to keep doing more of what I like and trying to encourage other people that actually it's not as difficult as you think to go off and pursue a dream. The hardest part is actually just taking the first step. Once you've taken that first step, believe it or not, it actually gets a lot easier.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think so, but it does.
It's a brilliant message. I really like it. So imagine, if you could visualize yourself having completed everything that you ever wanted to do and living, I suppose, your greatest life where you've nailed everything, what does that look like?
That's a very good question. I don't know, probably similar to where I am now. I'm quite happy. I feel fairly, fairly comfortable with where I am and content. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. I feel relatively content. But I think it's very important that you understand who you are and what drives you and what makes you happy. And I think I'll always, no matter what, I'll always be working towards something or doing something. So I don't think I'll ever be sitting there doing nothing, going, oh, I've done everything now, I'm just going to do nothing, because that's just not me.
Yeah.
I'll always be working on something or helping someone do something. Because isn't it funny? I remember when I was young, I used to think, wow, wouldn't it be great to have loads of money so you didn't have to work? But do you know what? That would be my worst nightmare now. Not having loads of money, but I couldn't think of anything worse than not having something to focus on, not having something to work towards. And working, you see, when you find out what you love and you go and do it, you will never ever do a day's work in your life again, because it's not work, it's fun. And if someone dropped 10 million quid on my lap tomorrow and said, there you go, you don't have any financial worries now, nothing would change. I'd give most of it away and I'd still do what I'm doing now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the for me that's kind of the peak of inspiration, really, is someone living truly in alignment with what they absolutely love, and they're kind of pursuing that fully.
And I'll tell you something, and I tell this to young people that I speak to all the time. Don't get wrapped up in looking at other people and looking at what they're doing and seeing these celebrities on TV. It's not real, it's not the real world. Focus on what you want to do. There'll always be someone out there who's bigger, who's better, more successful, more followers, got more money. But that's cool. There's also going to be people out there who are not going to be doing as well as you. So, I don't really look into what other people are doing. I just do my own thing. And, yeah.
What would you like your legacy to be?
What would I like my legacy to be? I'd like people to say, you know what, James Ketchell was a nice, genuine guy. He had time for everyone. He did a few cool things, but he also gave a lot back. And he spent time with people, trying to help other people too. And overall, he's just a fairly decent guy. That's I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
That's all. I have no desire to be some celebrity. I don't even really like that kind of celebrity culture. The world of media, and it's not, I kind of experienced it to a certain extent. It's not all as nice as you may think, if I'm really honest with you. It's very cutthroat. So, yeah, I just want someone to go, yeah, I know James, he was a cool guy, he was a nice guy, and he did a few cool things. That's it, really.
You're doing a good job of that just now, definitely. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
That's a really good question. The best advice I've ever received would be make the most of your time. You see, when I was young, I spent a lot of time laying around, sleeping in till God knows all day. I was such a lazy waster, if I'm honest, when I was a kid. And my best advice was, make the most of your time and don't ever give up, because the difference between someone who is seemingly a very successful person and has made it, the only difference is they just didn't give up. They just kept going. And that's why they're in the position that they're in. It's not because they're smarter than anyone else at all. It's just that they got back up when they were knocked down, and that's really it. And I think the most useful advice, to answer that question, is multiple advice really, and that would be maximise your time. Your time is priceless. It's the most important thing that any human being has. You never know when your time is up. And try and surround yourself with good people that complement you and your life, and life is, being with people is a two-way street. You don't just want to take from people. You want to be able to give too. So think about the sort of people that you're hanging around with. That's quite important. Your peer group. You are shaped by the people that you hang around with.
Yeah.
Maximise your time, and don't let your brain get the best of you. So many people, everyone out there has the ability to do remarkable things that they know they have the capability to do. It's within them, but their brain talks them out of doing it, and it's so sad. So yeah, there you go. It's just a few things.
Yeah. So one of the hallmarks of successful people and high achievers is their habits, or things that they do daily, their practices.
Yeah.
What are some of the things or habits that you might have that have led to the successes that you've had?
What are the habits I have? I would love to say I get up at 4 o'clock every morning, but I don't. I'm terrible. But I'll tell you what I do every day is I write a list of things that I want to do, and I write stuff down. And I'll tell you a very quick story. When I first got my sort of real proper job, I was working in sales for a big American firm. It was a good job. And my boss, he said to me, he told me to do something, and I forgot to do it. And he made me, for the next 2 months, write down a to-do list, because I never used a to-do list. And he said, I want you to write down everything, every single job you got to do today, you write it down and you tick it off. And at the end of the day, I want you to write down what you're going to do tomorrow. And do you know what? I thought at the time, it was a real insult. To the point where I was thinking about handing my notice in. I thought, what an insult. I don't need to do that. But it was the best thing that could have happened, because it doesn't matter how smart you are. Everyone should have a to-do list. And I write things down. Otherwise, I just forget them. And so he did me a massive favour, because it introduced me to, actually it's really important to write things down. So in terms of a habit, I write things down, and I like to tick them off, and I like to sort of say, well, by the end of this day I've done this, this and this, and that's quite important.
It's a good one.
But
it's underrated,
to really be, and it's just so simple.
Yeah.
And your trouble is you can ask the same question to lots of people, and they'll probably give you all these flashy answers, but yeah, I don't really have any flashy answers. The truth is, I just write stuff down. You know, and I hear videos and watch videos and stuff, and you see people saying, yeah, I get up at 4 o'clock every day. I only sleep for 4 hours because I work. It's just total crap. That's just my opinion. Yeah,
Totally
you need to rest. You can't. Whilst it's, yes, I'm sure you can get up at 4 o'clock, but for me, you need to get proper rest and things. And if there's no point in working yourself into the ground where you get ill and then you're not on good form, you're not thinking correctly. You know, life is not a sprint; it's a marathon, and you need to sort of pace yourself and think about the things that you're doing.
Yeah, a lot of that I think comes as well from understanding yourself and knowing
exactly,
what works for you.
Exactly.
You know, for sure.
And actually, do you know what? What works for me may not work for someone else. So the actual answer to that is there's no right or wrong. It's what works for you, basically.
Yeah. Who are some of the people that have either inspired or had the greatest influence on you?
That's a very good question, because a lot of people ask me that, and they expect me to probably name all of these incredible, intrepid explorers and things. And whilst I do have a huge amount of respect for people the people that were going off and finding new countries, and thought they were going to sail off the side of the earth, and the people that have done significant things, whilst I have huge respect for them, the people that have had the most impact on me and have been really good role models to me are the people that have been closest to me. So a good example of that would be my dad. Just a normal, hard-working guy who's always had a really good attitude. I've never once in my 35 years seen him cry or be down and fed up or feel sorry for himself. And both my mum and dad have worked very hard to give me food, give me clothes, give me a place to live and look after and support me. And what people don't realise is the people that you have to be really grateful to and really thankful for are actually the people that are around you every day and you think nothing of because you take them for granted. I don't really look up to any of these people that you see on TV. TV's not real. I look up to my parents who've been very good to me and have helped me a lot. I look up to them, and hopefully when they're a little bit older and their time is almost up, they can say, well, our son turned out okay. He's a good boy and he's done some cool things and he's got a good attitude. The only thing that you have control over in your life is having a good attitude and a good mindset when everything else is falling apart around you, and it will do at some point. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I've been rescued twice, once in the Atlantic, once in the Indian Ocean, and I have worked on projects that haven't gone my way. And I also say to people, anyone who's achieved anything at some point is going to have had a whole load of stuff not work out, because if you have never failed at anything, you're not really pushing yourself. Sometimes things don't go to plan. And when that happens, the only thing that you have control over is your own mindset and your own attitude.
What do you think is the greatest obstacle you have overcome?
The greatest obstacle I've overcome, it's not really that accident. That wasn't that big a deal. I'll tell you exactly what. The greatest obstacle I've overcome is myself. Because when I was young, I talked myself out of everything. I had zero confidence. And I was always a good person, but I was a very different person to who I am now. I had no confidence. I would always shy away from everything, and I wouldn't push myself out of my comfort zone. And I would like to think that I've overcome that to a certain extent now. So, because I have no problem pushing myself out of my comfort zone in a really weird, bizarre way, I get a bit of a kick out of pushing myself.
And how did you do that? How did you force yourself to get uncomfortable?
One step at a time. Yeah. I took that risk to row that boat across the Atlantic, and it worked out. And then that instilled some pretty solid confidence in me, because no matter what you then do for the rest of your life, you think, well, if I can do that, surely whatever else I have to face in life can't be that big a deal. But everyone's different. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. some people, they can't push themselves out of their comfort zone. And it's a shame because everyone can. It's just up here, it's just not letting them. And so the thing that has been a real challenge for me, and the thing that I'm really quite pleased that I feel I've overcome to a certain extent, was getting on top of my own mind. That is the most valuable thing anyone can do, because life is really all about having the right mindset and having the right attitude. If you have, you'll have a good life, no matter what happens. And it's all about how you look at things. You know, are you one of these guys that looks at things and think, oh, gee, that's not working out because he didn't do this or that didn't work out. There's a lot of people in this world where nothing is their fault. Everything is someone else's fault. I can't stand that.
Yeah.
Just sometimes take responsibility that actually, if you're not where you are or stuff's going wrong, it's your fault. Deal with it. What are you going to do about it? Because it's no one else's fault. It's only yours. It's only you have. Everyone has the potential to sort things out themselves. But it's easy, isn't it, to say, well, yeah, the bank didn't give me another loan, so I missed the mortgage payment and now I don't have a house. But it was the bank's fault that stitched me up. It's not my fault that I'm not going to work because I can't be bothered, you know. So sometimes reality really hurts, and the truth sometimes cannot be very nice. But the worst thing you can ever do is shy away from the truth. And sometimes doing the right thing in life is actually the hardest thing, typical. But yeah, once you learn that and you take responsibility for who you are, where you are, and where you want to go, you'll be amazed at the things that come your way. Yeah.
I would normally ask, actually, if you had the opportunity to speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you say? But I actually suspect that the version of James that probably needed the advice the most would be school James, when he's kind of skinny and, you know, got spots and whatnot. What would you say to him now?
What would I say to that boy now? I would say pay attention to what you're doing. But I would also say everything works out in the end and it's never too late. You know, I was sort of 25 when I found the things that I like doing. But hey, even if you're 55 or 65, it's never, ever too late to pursue a dream or attempt to try something new. The worst thing you can ever do is not do anything because you're scared. So the advice that I would have really to any young person is don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to try. If you don't ask for things, if you don't try for things, nothing will ever happen. And you create your own luck. If you push yourself outside of your comfort zone, I promise you, you will get lucky. You will, by default.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could change anything in the world, what would it be and why?
Oh, great. If I could change anything in the world, what would it be? I think I would change the way there's not enough people in this world that help other people. There are good people out there. But times are changing now, and human beings are becoming a little bit selfish. They're only focused on doing their own thing. And I believe life is like a clock. And I'm at 6 o'clock at the moment, and there are a lot of people at 12 o'clock who've been very successful, and they have helped me. And at some point, I want to be at 12 o'clock so I can help younger people and other people fulfill their own dreams and things. And too many people are wrapped up in themselves and they're not willing to do things for other people. And human beings are becoming a little bit more disposable now, I think, with the birth of social media and dating apps and all sorts of crap that's really out there now.
Yeah.
So I think that if I could change one thing, it would be just stop for a minute and think, what can I do to help someone else? Too many people are wrapped up in what they want, how much money they have or they want to try and earn. And life, I can tell you something, I've met lots of people with lots of money, and life is not about what you have, It's about what you do for other people. I have no interest in someone that shows off and flashes all their flashy stuff. That's great. And you may have worked very hard for it. Awesome. But you know what? What are you doing for other people? And that to me is important. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I absolutely love that. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. James, it's been brilliant speaking with you.
Well,
the time has passed incredibly quickly, actually.
I've really enjoyed it. I'm really grateful for you having me here. I love sharing stories and chatting, and this is what I do. So
you're incredibly good at it.
Taking the time. And,
you really are.
Yeah, I've got an incredible project going on next year. Incredible, and I'll come back and we'll share it with you.
Fantastic.
So we can let everyone find out. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, they can look on my website and pick up a copy of the book and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there anything that you maybe wanted to cover that we haven't covered, or?
I think if anyone's interested in following me, you can on my social media, which is at Captain Ketch, and I have a little YouTube channel, which I'm starting to vlog and stuff, and I've followed other. This is an example of the stuff I was talking about. I've been following people on YouTube for years, thinking, I like that, I want to have a go at it, I like it. And people say to me, you live this quite interesting life, you're always going off here doing this. And I thought, well, I'm going to start documenting it because it's a goal, it's fun. So I have a little YouTube channel, it's just James Ketchell, you can find it and subscribe, it's all free to do. And so that's a new thing that I'm working on, is my little YouTube and vlogging thing. I've been enjoying it. God knows if I'm any good, but I just have a go, and that's all you can do.
Absolutely.
So yeah, check me out, follow me there, and if anyone's got any questions, I don't ever not respond to people. Even if someone wrote me an email saying you're a bloody idiot and I can't stand you, I'd reply back saying, cool, thanks for your time, appreciate the feedback, I'll try and be better. So I'll never not reply to someone. So if anyone asks me any questions, or I do get a lot of young people come to me now asking me how you go about raising funds for sponsorship and expeditions and advice, and I always have time for everyone, no matter what. There's no such thing as not having time. It's about how you prioritise it and what you do. So drop me an email if anyone's got any questions.
Fantastic. Brilliant stuff.
No worries.
James,
thank you for having me, Elliot.
Thank you so much for your time. I've absolutely loved it. And,
cool. I hope to see you again.
Definitely. All right. James, thank you so
you.
much. Cheers.